Hello and welcome to Healthy Living. This is Dr. Donald Pelto. I have Mr. Mark Abbott here. He is from 90.io. He is part of the EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and he has a system that can help small business owners kind of help organize and run their businesses. Very exciting. Mark, welcome to the show.
Don, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Great to be here.
Tell me, I'm kind of excited about you have a couple of companies that you do. We're going to talk about 90.io right now. And so tell me kind of how you came across that. Have you been interested in the whole, there's certain people that do that type of thinking.
Yeah.
Systematize.
Yeah. So, God, I mean, I could spend hours just telling you sort of background on that, but, for 15 years, I've sort of had this vision of business building and technology coming together and helping us, integrate sort of all the best practices that we know work really, really well. Obviously with technology that makes it not only easier to do, but ultimately captures all the data. And then not only does all that, but then, the day would come where there'd be additional tools out there that would help us see things that you otherwise wouldn't have seen without the technology. And so, 15 years ago, I actually started thinking about all this stuff. I started to actually write my own version of a book called Connecting the Dots. And then over 10 years ago, I invested in a company that was starting to run on EOS. Read traction. I was like, Gino wrote the book better than I would have written it. He's really good at simplifying. And I'm actually a simplifier as well, sort of using strategic coach speak. And so I was like, geez, this is interesting. They're standing up this community. And I went and met with Don and Gino, and they didn't have any interest at that time in the technology opportunity. So, that's sort of the quick story.
That's neat. And what I find, so I'm a podiatrist, as you know, so I deal with, we're just, most of us are small business owners, maybe 2, 3, 4 doctors. There's some bigger groups, but I would say 90% are small. And where EOS comes in is that it offers I would say a skeleton, a form, a framework to help us do what we're not good at. And basically everything else that's around it. And what doesn't exist, I think, is, first of all, doctors that are interested in EOS. Very few have read traction. I've read traction, but I haven't had the traction enough to implement traction. And so as I was looking at your site, and who I got your information from was Josh White. I don't know if you know Josh.
I'm horrible with names. That's part of one of my issues. I can connect dots, but my rote memory is not particularly strong.
Yeah. So Josh used to own a shoe company called Safe Step, and he's entrepreneurial. And he went and he sold Safe Step, and he went into kind of almost like podiatry consulting a little bit. And in consulting, he came onto EOS, and he thought, well, this is the best framework to consult people with, is the EOS framework. And I was talking to him recently, and he's the one said, hey, Don, EOS is great, but for a lot of us, it's hard to implement everything. It's confusing, and you could do an implementer, I guess, or you could try 90.io is what he recommended. And he says, you should check that out. And I'm like, I didn't even know that existed. And when I went in and I played around with it, and I was like, wow, this is great. And I just wanted to get your opinion, because I once again appreciate your time, because it's not about the investing into it. It's me having the bandwidth who that could implement it for me. But what I'm thinking of, and I just wanted to know your opinion, is this something that you can kind of do? You know what Amazon does well now is they have these little boxes, and then you can just multiply these boxes to do certain tasks. Are there certain let's say podiatry clinics that you could make your box out of it, your 90.io box, and you can just transfer it to you could sell it or have other people use it? Is that something that's being done or does everyone's totally specific to their business?
So are you referring to the software, or are you referring to basically, sort of the EOS system in general?
I'm referring to EOS. No, I'm the software, your software.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the software is, a collection of the core tools one needs to get the total benefit of EOS. And those core tools, whether, you're a manufacturing company, a service company, whether you're, whether you're a professional services company, we have dentists running on our software, dentist offices running on our software, and because there are a number of them that have multiple offices. But yeah, in terms of sort of the core business building and awareness tools you need to build a decent, well-run business, we have everything inside of 90.
Yeah, I guess, so I guess being more specific, I make one for Central Mass Podiatry. Can I copy and paste that and give that to Virginia Podiatry or a different podiatry group, and they can just use that skeleton, because it has to be set up, right? Someone has to set it up initially. And then from there, can you just pass it on to someone else, or that's not something that's typically done? Everyone does the groundwork themselves. Because I'm not thinking very few people are willing to do that groundwork or even organized enough to do that work.
So it's interesting. Let's talk about, let's unpack what you mean by groundwork. So are you referring to measurables? Are you referring to the accountability chart, right? So, in theory, right, you could set up a box, right, with a set of measurables, a typical looking accountability chart, set up your framework, and then anyone you could say, hey, Joe, right, down at another podiatry office, you could say, hey, look, I've done this. You can just call the 90 folks, and they'll literally take my structure and put it out there, obviously not with your people, but just the structure they'd put in place. They could cut and paste and copy all the measurables that you have put in place. And so in that regard, yes, we could easily create a box for your industry.
Yeah, that's what, because in Strategic Coach, we always talk about industry transformers, and you are an industry transformer. Yeah. And I always, and what Dan teaches us is about using new technology that no one's using or even thinking of. And it almost like Zoom has opened up a whole new realm for us.
Right.
Yeah. And it's kind of like thinking about, well, is there a way you can almost take something that doesn't exist? Because it's something that I feel there's such a great need within small individual clinics. We are great technicians, but we're really not that great business people. And to figure out what metrics, to figure out, what to track, and even how to have these great meetings that your tool allows us, or EOS allows us to have. I think if you read the book, it's great. If you have a facilitator, that's great. But having the technology that kind of simplifies it is something that it's kind of intriguing to me. In terms of your other, let's talk about medical practices, dental practices.
I have one other idea for you. Yeah,
Please.
And I have one other idea for you, Don. So, and we're working on this right now. So envision that not only do you have the box, right? But now envision that you have a dashboard that lets you see on an anonymized basis how your practice is doing versus other practices.
Yeah, right? That's interesting. Currently, we have a way, we use Athena, which is our medical record. And they they benchmark us against their other podiatry practices within the medical record, but it does not have this aspect. And it was funny because I brought this up to my office manager and I showed her this, and because in any office you're going to have the human resources, you're going to have the marketing, you're going to have the sales. We have it all, but it's not organized. And there's no clear vision of the systems and things like that. And this product, or EOS in general, kind of reminds me of E-Myth as well, where if you've read the Entrepreneurial Myth, where we talk about systematizing, and I think a lot of things build on one another, and
Yes.
Having those systems in a lot of practices. Every time someone opens a practice, or every time a new doctor starts, you have to reinvent the system. Whereas the system's already set. If you just know who to ask, if you have a right who, or even my office, my staff, we have huge staff training books that they can just
Right.
use those books to do things. So I don't have to explain it over and over and over again. So I just want to compliment you on inventing this technology. And where do you see yourself in 3 years from now? Is it the dashboard? Are there other things? Where do you see yourself?
Oh yeah. So I believe that we're moving into a new age, the seventh age of work, and I call it right now tentatively the age of awareness. And I'm actually writing a book called Work 7.0, and so we're all about building the tools and the system that will enable companies to confidently move into this new era. And the new era is, just having a real good awareness of how everything's working, and not just within your company, but how is it working with your other stakeholders, right? How are your relationships with your patients, as an example? And so we're building out a host of tools that will be in a sister company. It's called Tools Hub, and that's actually Tools Hub's first product is Dash, which is this dashboard we just talked briefly about. But ultimately, there'll be other tools that'll be integrated. So, as an example, a survey tool, and there are a number of other tools that we're confident small and mid-sized businesses need in order to build what I like to refer to as highly productive, humane, and resilient organizations. So anything we can do that sort of helps 80% of that size companies, or the classic EOS company, 10 to 250 employees, anything that we can do technology-wise that isn't overly complicated, we'd like to, and we're not creating customized tools. They're all just really core tools that can help a small business like we're talking about right now. We're thinking seriously about building them.
That's very interesting. And in terms of how does this kind of mesh with your work with Strategic Coach and your how long have you been in Coach? Probably maybe longer than I have, probably. And how has Coach helped you?
Yeah, so I've been in Strategic Coach now. This is my second year,
mm-hmm.
and so Coach helps me, get better as an entrepreneur, right? Whereas EOS really helps leadership teams get better at the whole business building thing in terms of just the core tools, the core models,
best practices,
and best practices. And then what we're all about is building the technology that helps all this work across the organization, across and down, right? So ultimately, our vision is that every single person in the company has a seat in 90, so that you can really see, as you get bigger, right, you can see not only how your senior leadership team's doing, how each of your departments are doing, how the teams are doing, and how the individuals are doing. So ultimately, you're marching 90 days at a time, hitting 90% of everything that matters, including your rocks. Remember, it has rocks, your measurables, your organization, health scores, your leadership and management scores. So how am I doing as a leader and manager? So, basically getting everybody to hit 90 or above, and that's why we're called 90.
And so what did people do before 90.0? People that like the EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, for those that aren't aware of it, that are listening to this, were they just using multiple like Excel spreadsheets and Word documents and trying to combine them? What were they doing?
Yeah, they were doing that. So Excel and Visio for the accountability chart, and either Word or Excel for running their meetings, Excel for a scorecard. So that was the majority of them before the software platforms came out. Some were using like Asana or Basecamp to run things. They were sort of using other tools that were out there. And there are a number of different tools that provide a part of the solution, but there was nothing sort of fully integrated like what we're seeing.
Now, for people that are really busy, or they want to learn more, maybe for those that are watching this video, do you help people? Do you have people that help? I know, I think you guys have certain coaches, or I don't know if they're called coaches, if that's the right term you use, kind of implementers. Are those yours? Are those outside consultants? How long does that usually happen? How does that work for people that want to get, are interested?
Yeah, so there's several different ways to get up and running on EOS. One is, as you're mentioning, is to hire an implementer. So those are the coaches that teach entrepreneurial leadership teams how to master EOS. And so that's one avenue. Another avenue is, they'll read the books. There are several books in the library, including not just Traction, but there's a book on how to be a great boss. And there's another book called What the Heck is EOS that's good for sharing with all the people in the company, so they understand what the heck is this thing that the company's doing these days, and self-implement. And then those are really the two approaches that most entrepreneurs take. And then you'll find that, I don't know what the percentage is, but there's a good number of entrepreneurs who will take that self-implementer approach, and then they'll get into it for a year or so and say, I think this is going to work well. I know we could do this better. And so they go out and they get a coach, an implementer to help them. In terms of the implementers, there was this big community within the EOS world, and there are almost 400. Maybe we've gone over 400 right now, implementers around the world, and the vast majority are in the United States. And so if you go to eosworldwide.com, there's a whole directory of implementers. And so they're across the country, and find someone who resonates bio-wise and reach out to them. And you can also go directly through EOS Worldwide, and they'll help you find someone who they think would make sense for you.
And then, so those are the ones that are referring to you then, probably, are the implementers that are talking about 90 that have a good experience with you, that say, hey, you need this, let's use this.
Yeah, so literally, so in the world of EOS, there's when you come in and you go into basically it's called boot camp. So you come into a training program. It's for several days, and then you become part of the community, and then you get some clients, and you keep working and growing your practice. And at some point you've had enough experience where you go from being what we call a professional implementer to a certified implementer. And so certified have been doing this for a while, and there are a number of criteria for hitting certified. But that group of certified implementers, the majority of the implementers refer clients to us.
Perfect. Wow. And you're you kind of have a what Dan likes to call kind of a value provided monopoly within EOS then to provide this service.
Well, there's another company out there that also provides software. Actually, started before we did, so they're out there as well. So we're not quite a monopoly. There are a couple of us. And then, as I mentioned earlier, some people will use Asana as an example, or Basecamp, or some of the other tools as well. But yeah, the majority of the certified implementers suggest that their clients should take a look, frankly, at both software, so they feel good, because they're different, right? They have different look and feel, and we're obviously partial to our own, but that way they take a look at both, and then the client decides what makes the most sense.
Hey guys, thank you for watching Healthy Living. You're going to find a few links here I'd like you to click. One is to subscribe to this channel on YouTube. Also, you can learn more. There are some videos here you can see.